Hey everyone, and welcome to Hooked on Needles and Crafts. Today we're going to be doing another Annie's Crochet Afghan Block of the Month Club. For my returning subscribers, thank you so much for tuning in, and for my new viewers, please consider subscribing, share, hit that like button, leave a comment below, and click on that notification bell for future videos. So today, you guys, we are doing another Block of the Month Club kit. If you don't know Annie's, they are a subscription knit kit, crochet kit. There's so many other types of craft projects they have on their website. This is for a crochet Afghan, and an Afghan is pretty much made up of all these granny squares, or not necessarily granny squares, but these crocheted squares that will end up crocheting all together. So today we're doing blocks 10 and 12. Okay. In this kit, when you go on their website and you click on the Afghan, it'll tell you how many kits make up this Afghan. Now each kit is approximately, at least for me here on the East Coast, $27 and some change. That's including shipping and tax and the kit. And you can change the frequency. I had this sent 2 times a month. You can send it once a month if you'd rather have it that way. But the first kit comes with everything that you'll need to start. It comes with a booklet for, I think I had 3 blocks in there. Then you also get the packet of stitch markers. You also get the crochet hooks, and I guess I'm not 100% sure, but you might get the accessories to sew things and what have you. I got these kits totally like maybe a year or 2 ago, and I've been slowly making these blocks for you guys. But anyway, so what also comes in the kit is spools of yarn to make the blocks. So in this case we have, oh, not 2 blocks, we're doing 3 blocks. So we have biscotti, we have weathered gray, and we also have driftwood. Now these are Premier yarns, if you're wondering. It's an anti-pilling Premier yarn. If you don't know Premier, that's one of the major yarn companies you can find at the hobby store. So would they have that color in the store? I don't know. You can check, because sometimes you might lose spools, or maybe there isn't enough, although I've never had that experience before. But anyway, so we're going to be doing 3 blocks this week, in case you're wondering. And we're starting off with block 10. Block 10 is going to be using driftwood. So I'm going to be getting driftwood. Let's see. On the table here. I'm going to be putting away the other spools in the baggie so it doesn't get lost or dirtied. And then I'm going to go grab the crochet hooks and stitch markers. Alright, so you do have the small and large hooks. And then this isn't all of them, but this is some of my packaged stitch markers. The ones that they gave me were green and orange. This just happens to be, I mixed all of them up. I save all my stitch markers because you never know when you're going to need them, such as now. So I'm just going to dump these out onto my desk here. Alright, due to copyright reasons, I cannot share the information inside this booklet. If you really want to make this Afghan for yourself, I highly recommend you go onto Annie's and get the kits. So what I do on my channel is I teach you how to do the basic stitches step by step 3 times, and then I go at my normal pace. I will talk about how to read the instructions, what these bits and pieces and letters mean. If you need to speed up or slow down the video, go ahead and click on the gear button in the corner. There's playback options to go fast or slow. If you don't need to hear me talk, you could always lower the volume on your device and click on the CC closed caption button. Alright, so let's get into this. So whenever you start these things, it's always in best practice to use the end of the yarn that's inside the spool. The other end that's on the outside is probably going to be a lot quicker to find, and usually they'll tuck it inside here. So kind of confusing, because then you're going to think that that's the end on the inside. It really isn't. They just tuck this in so that it doesn't accidentally get pulled or anything. But we're just going to pull this out, and then I'm just going to tuck it back into this band because I don't want it to get mixed up with anything, especially the other end. So once you've got that tucked away in there, then we can go inside the spool and look for the other end of the yarn. So sometimes it'll be right there telling you, this is me, hello. Other times it's going to be just buried in there. So if you don't find it on this end, check the other end just to make sure, because the goal is to try to not pull out chunks, but if that can't be helped, then you know, it is what it is. So if you're not finding the end, grab a random piece inside the spool. Now brace yourself, you might pull out a huge chunk and that's okay. You might pull out a small chunk and that's okay, or you might find the other end and that's a miracle. But we're doing this so that when we grab our feeder yarn, we don't disturb this banding or anything. All we need to do is put a paperweight on here and pull the feeder yarn and we're good to go. If we use that end that we tucked into this banding, you have to remove the band, and then when you pull that end, your spool is going to roll around every time you pull for a feeder yarn. So I grabbed a little piece, I'm going to pull that out, and I'm just going to keep pulling it. So this wad came out, but look, there's only one road here that came out. So we found the end. The other end is in here. It's actually right here. So that's good. So I'm going to set this spool aside, and I'm just going to detangle this wad of yarn, and then we're gonna get this started. So we are going to be starting off with a slip knot, so I'm going to show you how to do that. But yeah, after doing this, once we use up all this yarn, you'll be able to see one piece of yarn come out. And I didn't really put a paperweight on it yet, but when I do, it's just going to be an easy pull of the feeder yarn. So I'm doing this for righty. If you need a lefty, just flip your hands. Flip your hands. Just imagine what I'm doing in camera and just imagine it for lefty and not righty. Okay, so let's start off with making a slip knot. So you're going to take your ring, pinky, and thumb, and you're going to hold one end here. Then you're going to take your index and middle finger and hold the yarn separate like this. You want to keep this tight, this a bit loose. You're going to take two fingers and push it up. Then we're going to turn it down to create this huge loop. And then I'm just going to take my index and middle finger, and we're going to grab on this feeder yarn and pull it through the loop. So now we have this huge knot. So what we have to do with the knot is just tighten it up. So just pull on the feeder yarn to tighten up the knot. And you want to tighten it up close to your thumb as possible, because this is the amount of yarn we're wasting. And you know, the smaller amount of yarn we're wasting, the better. You can pull on the tail just to tighten up that knot a little bit. But now we have this huge loop. So what I'm going to do is pull on the feeder yarn, and we're going to make this loop small enough to fit a crochet hook, and then we can get started. So it says we're going to start with a larger hook. Oh, and I'm holding it like I'm a lefty. I'm normally a lefty, so sometimes I forget that I'm doing this for a righty. Okay, so I'm gathering up some feeder yarn. To start this off, you want to be able to hold the knot that we made here, the slip knot. This is going to create some stability for making new stitches. I like to underhand my hook because it helps make my hand more relaxed. If I had it overhand, I find that I'm tensing up my hand more, and this is going to create tighter stitches, which is not always great. And then after a short while, you can feel your hand, the tension in your hands, just getting a little bothersome, you know. So try to do it underhand like this. Now the first thing we're going to learn is the chain stitch. The chain stitch is the basic stitch in crocheting, and it's really simple. So we're going to take our feeder yarn and we're going to do a yarn over, which is basically taking the feeder yarn and putting it over the hook like that. Alright, so that was a yarn over. So now we're going to take the yarn over and we're going to pull it through this loop. So hook that yarn over and we're going to pull it through the loop, creating a chain stitch. Now if we look closely, a chain stitch consists of 3 loops. You have one on this side, one on the other side. If I turn it on its side, you have this loop back here. I call that the back hump. Alright, so let's do another one. So we're going to yarn over, which is taking the feeder yarn, and we're going to put it over the hook. So we're going to take the yarn over and pull it through this loop. So hook it, pull it through the loop, and we've created another chain stitch, and each chain stitch consists of 3 loops. We have one on this side, one on the other side. We turn it on its side, and this back one here is called, I call it the back hump. Now if we're looking at it on top, you can see that it's slowly looking like a braid. But let's do one more together. So I'm going to take my feeder yarn and do a yarn over. That's putting the yarn over the hook. Then we're going to take the yarn over and pull it through the loop. So hook the yarn over and pull it through the loop. So now we have 3 chains. Each one is made up of 3 loops. We have one on this side, one on the other side. Turn it on its side, and this back one right here I call the back hump. Alright, so now that I've shown you how to do chain stitches at least 3 times step by step, you can go ahead and rewind this video as many times as you need until you're comfortable doing the chain stitch on your own. But I'm going to go ahead and finish the number of chains that are in the instructions for row 1, and the abbreviation for chain is CH. Alright, so once you have your chains made, it's always in good practice to make sure you have the right stitch count. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Alright, and once you have the number of stitches you need, we're going to move on to the next steps. So after this comma, we have now DC, and DC stands for double crochet stitch. I'm going to show you how to do that. But this part here that we're going to read next is pretty much universal for any project that you do chains and then you do a stitch for, in this case a double crochet stitch or DC. So it says in the 4th chain from the hook, because the first 3 chains are going to count as 1 double crochet stitch or DC, we're going to be putting in our hook. So in case you didn't know, the height that we're building here for a double crochet stitch is going to be 3 chains. Again, that's pretty universal. So if you ever see any other kit, they're going to tell you to put the hook into the 4th chain, because these 3 here are going to make up a double crochet stitch. Alright, so we're going to stick our hook into the 4th chain from the hook. So count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm going to put it in the back hump only because I like to retain the braid that we have here. So you can turn it on its side, and we're going to stick the hook into these back humps. So I'm going to do that now. Well, I will be doing that now, but first let's talk about the double crochet stitch. So let me show you how to do that one. We're going to be yarning over, and then we're going to stick our hook into the 4th chain from the hook, back hump. Alright, so you should have now 3 loops on your hook. We're going to yarn over again, and you're going to pull up a loop, so you should still have 3 loops. Then we're going to yarn over, and you're going to pull through 2 loops. 1, 2. So you should have 2 loops left. Then we're going to yarn over, and you're going to pull through those 2 loops. 1, 2. So we have our first crochet, double crochet stitch made, but the 3 chains here are going to act as the a double crochet stitch. So technically we have 2 now. Alright, just for my purposes sake, because it's hard to see for me, I'm going to put a stitch marker on top of the 3rd chain. So the 3 chains that we skipped, here's 1, here's 2, here's 3. I'm going to put the stitch marker on the 2 loops here, not the back hump. But if each chain has 3 loops, I'm putting it on these 2 and not the back hump. If I turn it on the back and I pull it, I want to see that I've put the stitch marker right underneath it. I don't want to see that I pierced the yarn. You don't want to pierce the yarn. You want to slip them right under the loops. And this is just going to mark the top of the stitch, the row that we're making. Okay. So now let me show you how to do the next steps. All right. So we are going to be doing another double crochet stitch. So let me show you how to do that. We're going to yarn over. We're going to put our hook into the next stitch, but we're going to use the back hump. So turn it on its side and stick your hook into the back hump right here. We're going to yarn over. You're going to pull up a loop, so you have 3 loops. Yarn over, pull through 2 loops. You'll have 2 loops left, then yarn over and pull through those 2 loops. Okay. Now we're going to do this one more time with you guys. Yarn over into the next stitch. We're going to use the back hump, put in your hook. Then we're going to yarn over. You're going to pull up a loop, so we have 3 loops. Yarn over, pull through 2 loops. yarn over and pull through those 2 loops. Alright, so now that I've shown you how to do double crochet stitches at least 3 times step by step, you can rewind this video as many times as you need until you're comfortable doing double crochet stitches on your own. But I'm going to finish the rest of the double crochet stitches in this next section. We did the double crochet hook from the 4th chain from the hook. So that's this right here, and this 3 chains is going to be counted as 1 double crochet stitch. But in this next section of double crochet stitches, it tells you how many chains we're going to be using next. So let's go ahead and do that. And then after you've finished your double crochet stitches, the next section we have is talking about chain stitches. So go ahead and do that. But the next section that we stumble upon here is showing an SK. And an SK in the crochet world means skip. So it says we're going to be skipping some chains, right? So keeping that in mind, let's look at the next section. We now have brackets. So how to read these brackets and what they mean. Well, it's kind of like a math equation if you are that far along in math, but we're basically going to focus on the instructions inside the brackets because we're probably going to be repeating all the instructions in the brackets whatever number of times the instructions tells us to. So to not get overwhelmed with all of this information, let's look at the instructions inside a comma, and that's pretty much what we've been doing so far. So the first section before the comma says that we're going to be doing double crochet stitches in the next number of chains. So that's simple enough. So don't forget that we have to skip some chains. So what that means is we're not going to be working into the next one. You have to look at the instruction, and we're going to be skipping that number of chains, and then we can start working on our brackets. So skip your stitches, and then we're going to work on our bracket. Do the number of double crochet stitches that it's asking you to do. Alright, so then the next set of instructions before the next comma, we have to do some chains, so go ahead and do that. And then the next section, it talks about skipping some chains, so do that. So now that we've just focused on the little pieces in the bracket, it wasn't that bad, right? So now it's telling us that we're going to basically repeat this all the way across. When it says across, you're going to do the same thing all the way till the end. And then there's a last bit of instructions, but let's focus on the brackets for now. So now that I've completed that bracket the first time, I'm going to go repeat the next. So again, we're going to be keeping in mind about the skip chains, and then we're going to do the double crochet stitches. So yarn over, well, you all know to yarn over for the double crochet stitch because I've shown you how to do it, but let's do our bracket again. Focusing on the double crochet stitches. have to feed my kittles. He'll probably run up here in a bit. Oh, he's already here. Hi, buddy. I know, let me just finish this bracket. Hi, buddy. Are you mad? Okay. Next part of the bracket, we have to do our chains, and then we're going to skip stitches again. Alright, so let me just real quick feed my kittles, and I'll be right back. Alright, the beast is fed. Oh. I keep acting like I'm a righty, or I'm a lefty. Alright, so continuing with my bracket. Okay, so now for the last part, we now have some double crochet stitches to do, and then we're going to turn the project, and I'll show you how to do that. Alright, so this is our row, and we have to turn it. When you're a righty, use up all those chains on the left, and they've turned into this row that you see here on the right. Now, in order to do another row, we need stitches on the left, but there's nothing here to work on. So they tell you to turn, and this is universal for most projects. So to turn, you basically just take your row here, and we're just going to flip this back over to the left, just like that. So we're basically just turning our hook so that now the hook part is pointing at all these stitches on the left. Alright. Now at the end of this row 1, we see us like parentheses. Now this is basically going to tell you how many of each item you need, and it tells you the number of chain spaces you need, which is CH SPS, and that's all the skip stitches we've done. And then it also tells you how many double crochet stitches that we've done as well. So as a beginner, I highly recommend that you go back and you count all your double crochet stitches as well as your chain spaces, aka skipped stitches, that it matches up with the instructions. And then we're going to move on to row 2. So in bold, it's going to tell you to do the chain 3, and that is assumed. I'm just assuming right now that you're building the height again of the row, which is, and we're going to be working with double crochet stitches. In parentheses, it says see pattern notes. So those pattern notes are just going to explain what is going on here. We have okay, so yeah, it's pretty much telling you that we are building the height. I forgot to tell you this though. We're going to take a stitch marker and we're going to mark the end of this row so that we know where that last stitch is. So take your stitch marker, we're going to put it just underneath the front and back loops that we did before. You can pull it to make sure you didn't split the yarn. You can close this up, then turn. Then we're going to build our chains for the height of the next row. Now what I am going to do again, like I did in the very beginning, just because we're going to have to put our hook in this later, and I want to know where that is really quick. I'm going to put another stitch marker right under the front and back loops of that third chain we made. This is going to be the top of the double crochet stitch because these 3 chains is going to act as a double crochet stitch. Alright, so now moving on to the next section, it looks like we're going to be doing a double crochet stitch, and it says that we're putting it in the first, basically the first stitch. So the great part about putting a stitch marker at the last stitch we made on the previous row, we now know where we're going to put our hook next. So we're going to be doing our double crochet stitch in this first stitch. So go ahead and do that. Then our next set of instructions is telling us to do some chains, so go ahead and do that. And then after that, it also tells us that we're going to be doing some skipped stitches, so skip those. And then we're going to learn how to do a single crochet stitch. So to do a single crochet stitch, we're going to stick our hook into the stitch that we need after we skipped the number of stitches it tells us to. Then we're going to yarn over and we're going to pull up a loop, so we have 2 loops. Then we're going to yarn over and you're going to pull through those 2 loops. So that is a single crochet stitch. If you recall, at the double we did it twice, and that's why it's called double crochet. And this, for the single, we just did it once. Alright, so after we do that, we have to do some chains again, so go ahead and do that. And then we are going to be skipping some stitches again. And then we have a set of brackets. So again, how to read these, we're gonna pretty much assume that we're gonna be repeating this bracket, and sure enough, it's one of those where we're going to repeat it all the way across the row. So let's focus on these sections. We're first going to be doing our double crochet stitches, but they want us to do it in what they call, I've mentioned over, chain space, and this is abbreviated as CHSP. So let's go ahead and do that. Now the chain space is this gap here, in case you didn't know from the previous round, and we're going to be doing our double crochet stitches in here. Alright, so once you've completed that, we're going to end up doing some chain stitches. So go ahead and do that. And then we're going to be skipping some stitches again. And then we're going to work another single crochet stitch. So I'm going to show you how to do that for the second time. Don't forget to skip your stitches. We're going to stick our hook into the next stitch we're supposed to be putting this in. Then you're going to yarn over and pull up a loop, so you have 2 loops. Yarn over and pull through those 2 loops. And that's a single crochet stitch. And after we've completed that, we're going to be doing some chains again, and then skipping some more stitches. And that's the end of the bracket. So now that I've gone through the bracket at least once, I am going to repeat this, and when I get to the single crochet stitch, I'm going to show you how to do it one last time. Alright, to do a single crochet stitch, put your hook into the next stitch you're supposed to. Then we're going to yarn over, you're going to pull up a loop, so you have 2 loops. Then you're going to yarn over and we're going to pull through those 2 loops. And that's your single crochet stitch. So now that I've shown you how to do the single crochet stitch at least 3 times step by step, you can rewind to that section as many times as you need until you're confident in doing the single crochet stitch on your own. I'm going to finish the remaining brackets, and then we'll come in for the last tail bit of instructions. Okay, in case you didn't know, I have used up all that yarn that we pulled out, so now I'm just pulling your feeder yarn straight out of the spool. I didn't have to put a weight on it yet, but it's not rolling around or anything. It's doing what I wanted it to do. So it's always a good thing. It beats having the spool roll around all over the place. Alright, so now for the last bit of instructions, it says that we have to do some double crochet stitches in this last stitch. So that means we're using the same last stitch. And then of course I'm going to go take a stitch marker, and I'm just going to mark the last stitch we made just under that braid. Make sure you don't split the yarn. Close this off and then turn. Okay, so again, the parentheses at the end is gonna just let you know how many single crochet stitches you need, how many chain spaces you'll need, and how many double crochet stitches you'll need to get row 2 correct. So once you've done that, we're going to move on to row 3. And then of course, from the previous round where we said, when we saw the C pattern notes, that this is probably going to be typical in this instruction, where we're going to chain 3, and that's going to build the height of the row, and it's also going to count as a double crochet stitch. Now for row 3, we have some double crochet stitches to do, so go ahead and do that. And because we marked where that last stitch is made, it says that we are going to put it into the next, so we're not going to use the stitch marker stitch here because that's where this double crochet is. So we're going to go into the next stitch and do our double crochet stitch. So you have to read the wording carefully. I forgot too, I want to put a stitch marker on top of the third chain here. I forgot to do that. 1, 2, 3. Just so I know where to put my hook in later. Alright. So the next bit of instruction, again, we have to do some double crochet stitches, but we are working into the chain space, which is this gap. Then you have to do some chains, and then we're going to be doing another double crochet stitch in the chain space. And then we have brackets. So again, we're going to be repeating these brackets across. We have some double crochet stitches to do. Then we're going to be going into the chain space. Doing some chains. And then we're going to be doing another double crochet stitch in the chain space. Alright. And then I've completed the bracket. So now that I've done that, all we have to do is repeat the bracket to the very end, and then there's the last bit of instructions to that as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that now. Alright, so after you've repeated the brackets as many times as you can, all at the end. Then it's telling us we have to do some double crochet stitches, so go ahead and do that. Now, I did mention that I needed to put my stitch markers at the top of the third chain at the very beginning, because now we have to do our last stitch in there. And when you don't put the stitch marker, it may or may not be easy for you to find where you're going to put your hook. But since I've already marked it, I know exactly where I need to put it, so make sure you put it through that third chain, and we're going to do our double crochet stitch, and that's going to be it for the round. I'm going to be marking the last stitch I made, and I'm going to turn. So again, it's very important to, if you have these stitch markers, to really use them, because they're going to make your life so much easier. But I did put that stitch marker on the third chain and was able to find where to put my hook very quickly. So again, we have our parentheses to indicate how many stitches and spaces or whatever it's telling you that you need per row. Double check that count to make sure. It's easier to catch your mistakes early on, so that at the very end you don't realize something is, or you then realize something's wrong, and then you're gonna have to unravel a lot more than you would have if you caught it right away. All right, so now we're gonna do row 4. This is very involved, this block. So we're going to do a chain 1, and this is going to be universal to the height of a single crochet stitch. So a double crochet stitch has 3 chains. A single crochet has 1 chain for height, so that's why they have you chain 1. You can stitch mark that. And this is kind of, you just got to read the instructions though, because sometimes they don't even count that as anything. But we're going to be doing our single crochet stitch in the first stitch, meaning the stitch marker that we put for the last stitch of the row there. So put your hook into that first stitch, and we're going to be doing a single crochet stitch. All right. Again, we might not need this one. It might be needed for here. Single crochet stitches are a little complicated, as simple as they are. Okay, so we're going to do some chains, and then we're going to be doing some double crochet stitches. All right, now we have some asterisks. This is where it gets a bit interesting. So, whether it's 1 asterisk or 2 asterisks, we're just going to mental note that right now, because those typically mean that further down in the instruction, it's going to tell you to go back to that asterisk. So, let's just start this first. Let's do our chain stitches, and then we are going to be skipping some stitches and then doing a single crochet stitch in the next stitch. Okay, then we're back to doing some chains, skipping some stitches, and then we're going to be doing some double crochet stitches. Okay, so after we finished that section there, the next section says REP, which is repeat, and then it says from asterisk across. So you can kind of, and I don't know why they do this, it's pretty much almost the same as a bracket. So we're gonna pretty much repeat everything inside the asterisk all the way across. Okay, and then there's a bit of instruction after that, but let's focus on this. So okay, I did as many of the brackets as I could to the other end. Now the last section says that you're pretty much going to end where there's 2 asterisks. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and do that. Alright, and then the last bit is that we're going to do our single crochet stitch. Again, I put a stitch marker at the top of that 3rd chain, so I will have no problems finding where I need to put my hook. And we're going to do our last stitch here. I am going to put a stitch marker right there. And kind of looking at this now, it looks like the first stitch marker we put at the beginning, we can just relocate this. We're going to put this not at the chain 1, but we're going to put at the first single crochet stitch that we did, which was here, right? All right. Okay, now we're going to turn. We finished row 4. We're going to be doing row 5. Okay, so for row 5, we're back to doing the universal height for a double crochet stitch. So we're going to chain 3, and I'm going to stitch mark the 3rd chain that I made. Then we have our double crochet stitch to make. Then we have to do some more double crochet stitches. right? And we have to do another double crochet stitch. Alright, then we're stumbling upon some brackets. So in this bracket we're going to be doing chain stitches, double crochet stitches all the way across. Okay, and then there's a last bit of instructions. So all right, so I finished the bracket, and then we are going to be ending with a double crochet stitch. So I did put a marker where that is it then. Alright, yeah. That's the chain one. This is the single crochet stitch. I think I just took it out and put in the same stinking stitch. Alright. So we are going to do our last double crochet stitch in this last stitch here. And then I'm going to put a stitch marker at the last stitch we made and turn. This time I am going to count my stitches because I feel like I think it's right, but just want to make sure because I'm not 100% sure. Okay. All right, so I have the right number, and we're going to turn this. Now, for the next rows, we have rows 6 through 17. So we can say that this is row 6. we can use our stitch markers to help us keep track of what rows we're on. So if this one is 6, we have 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. I like to always double count, so 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. So we're doing these number of rows. It's not going to count these extra stitch markers that you're going to use to mark the tops of the third chain or the next row, you know what I mean? So you can use these as ticks to kind of count off how many rows you did. But for rows 6 through 7, we do have in brackets that it's pretty much repeating rows 2 through 5. So I'm not particularly happy about these instructions because it's not as easy. You really have to pay attention to where you are. So the stitch markers can help, but I'm pretty sure it might get confusing once you start adding the extra stitch markers to indicate the top of the chain, so you know where to put your hook. So it's also helpful to take a piece of paper and a pencil and write down where you are in your instructions. But I'm going to go ahead and do in silence rows 6 through 17, and then we're going to come back in and we're going to work through round 18, which is pretty much the last bits. Alright, so I finished rows 16 through 17, and at the end of that last row we are not going to turn our project here. So I am going to mark the last stitch. I did have to get more stitch markers. They're all over the place, so but I'm just going to add one here so I know where the last stitch is. Now we're going to be working at the end of the rows, and we're going to switch out to our smaller hook. So just pull your hook out a little bit to give yourself some space to remove the hook and potentially not lose your stitch in case you accidentally pull something. But we're going to switch out to the smaller hook, slip this in, and I don't know if everyone's going to get the same color in size crochet hook, so don't go by my crochet color. Go by the number of the I think this is like the gauge. Is it called the gauge? I don't know. The size of the crochet hook. It'll tell you in the instructions somewhere. I always glaze over that, so I don't know. I just go by bigger and smaller because, you know, I do architecture, so measurements are what I know, and I'm using the smaller sized hook for this. Alright, so then what we're going to do is chain one. We're making the height of the edging, which is going to be all single crochet stitches, so that's pretty universal to do a chain, just one chain. And then the issue that we have now is that we're going to be dividing the ends to the number of single crochet stitches we have to have. Again, I cannot disclose that number of stitches required for this end, but I can share a tip. So we had left, or I had left, all my stitch markers on here. That will help me kind of divide out where I'm putting my stitches. So I just gotta pretty much count all the tabs, and then depending on the number of single crochet stitches they're telling you to make, you can kind of, you know, make at least a better guess on where you're going to put your stitches to evenly span out those stitches. So I haven't really, this is actually the next day, so I haven't really thought about this right now, so I'm going to take a quick second that you're not going to even know of me counting and figuring out where I'm going to put my stitching. Alright, so I'm just going to actually thin some of this out. Alright, gonna gather up some feeder yarn. And then we're just gonna do this. So you at least want to put your hook into at least 2 loops so that you can make a nice hold on the yarn here. I don't like to put my hook into 1 loop. It just feels a little flimsy to me. must have miscounted because I am short a row. So you get the idea. Let me come back. I'm gonna have to add this somewhere and readjust my stitches, so be right back. Alright, I have it sorted out. I evenly divided the single crochet stitches that I needed for this end, and then we're gonna come upon a corner. And so for the corner we have to do a number of single crochet stitches so that we can make a nice turn. So go ahead into, I'm going to use the first stitch from the very first set of chains that we did, and I'm going to be making my single crochet stitches to turn that corner. And then when we're done with that, we have to divide again the single crochet stitches across. So I'm going to do that now. Alright, so now we have to turn the corner. So in this same stitch here, we're going to work our single crochet stitches. Alright, so we pretty much have two edges down. So in silence, I'm going to do the other two, and then I'm going to come back in and show you how to join and then fasten off. Alright, so I've gone all the way around, and now we're going to do a join, and so I'm going to show you how to do that. It's basically a slip stitch. So what we're going to do is go into the first single crochet stitch we did on this end, on this edge, and we're going to do a slip stitch. So yarn over, and we're going to pull through all the loops off our hook, and that is a slip stitch. So now we just have to fasten off. I'm going to cut about 1 inch or so of the feeder yarn because we no longer need this. And then I'm going to do a yarn over, and we're going to pull that through the loop but all the way out, and then we can tighten this up to secure a knot, and that is pretty much it. So comment below, let me know how it went. Obviously you'll save this block for later. So we had just completed block 10. I did skip around because I have all these packages and I just grab one and cut it open, but I also think that as I did receive these, it was in order anyway. So you don't start off with ones. Don't worry if you get a kit and it's not, you know, even the same numbers I'm doing right now. So, but let me know if you want to get this kit and try it yourself, or let me know if you already have it. If you end up completing any of these blocks or the Afghan altogether, feel free to post on my community tab. I'm not sure if everyone is aware, but you can share your posts on my channel for any communal feedback, and of course I will always give feedback on anything that you post on there, or reply rather. But yeah, the more you do these, the easier it's going to become and the better your stitches are going to get. So I do like this kind of Afghan because each square is a different stitch or different technique or pattern, to where you're eventually going to see it down the road again. So if I can at least prepare you for the future, I'll be happy with that. But here is what it's looking like now. It's not so much of a pattern, I feel. This is upside down, I think. Yeah, you can kind of see a pattern, but it's not as prominent as the other blocks that we've done. The next time we have a video, we're going to do block 11, of course. But thank you guys so much for watching. This is Hooked on Needles and Crafts. Please share, like, and subscribe for future videos, and I'll see you again next time. Thanks. Bye.